Hey everyone, welcome back. I hope you've had a great long weekend and are excited to dive into everything that we're going to be covering this lesson. Good news is I hear that we are actually going to be returning to school on June 1st, only on a voluntary basis. Who knows what that's going to look like, but we'll see as this comes along, right? Anyways, we are actually at the end of our angle unit here, which is kind of nice because we only have two more units to go, which is not too bad. We might be able to get through them all. We might not. We'll see what happens here. Anyway, so the last thing that we're going to talk about is some just extension exercises with these angle relationships we were talking about. So with the Z pattern and the F pattern that we were seeing before, how we can actually extend those and use it to solve some more tricky angle related problems, okay? So let's look back at a similar diagram that I drew last time. And this diagram here, it has both patterns that we were talking about last time, right? It has the Z pattern here, and it also has that F pattern that we were talking about, like right here, right? So it has the Z, this is the Z, or sorry, this is the F one, F pattern, and this was the Z pattern. And we can get a lot of information out of this picture here. And we can solve for every single angle there if we know at least one of those angles, which is kind of cool, right? So let's look at some of the notes down here that talk about what kind of things we could solve from the following up here. So if the lines crossed by the transversal and transversal, actually don't even worry about how like fancy that word sounds. Transversal lines we could just think of as lines which intersect a central line. So here's our central line, and these both are transversal lines, and they're parallel because they run at the exact same angle to one another, and they'll never ever touch, right? So let's see what this is saying. The interior alternate angle equals angles are equal. Sorry, this is basically saying that opposite angles are equal. And we talked about opposite angles last time, right? So if we have, well, in this case, we can look at here. If we have angle B here, we have angle C here. They're opposite to one another. And we said that if they're opposite, well, then angle B has to equal angle C, right? Opposite angles, opposite angles. That's all that the interior alternate angles are saying. The exterior alternate angles are equal. So again, we have the case of an opposite angle. If we look at angle H here and angle E, angle H equals angle E, they're opposite angles, right? So same thing. Same thing as above up there. The corresponding angles are equal. So these are the angles these are the ones you can think about, these Z and F pattern. Pattern. So remember how we said that H would be the same thing as angle D up here because of this pattern here, that we have this interior of D is going to equal the interior of our F here, or the exterior, depending on which way you want to look at it. The interior of the, and then same thing here, though, so the C here is going to equal F here for our patterns here. So that's all that was talking about with the interior angles there. And then this is the one that we haven't talked about yet. This is talking about interior and exterior angles on the same side of the transversal. So remember, this is our transversal, and the same side of a transversal, we would be talking about something like G and E. And this makes sense that they're supplementary, right? Because G and E, if we add those two up, G plus E, what would those make? What angles would those make? Well, it would make the angle of a straight line, right? Which is our central line here. And the angle of a straight line is 180 degrees. So G and E should add up to 180 degrees. So let's look at a quick example of this. And let's say that we had some central line, and then we had two lines going through that. And I'm going to copy and paste each one so that it's exactly the same. Okay, so we had two lines, technically three. These two are parallel, and let's say that we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And we want to solve for all of those angles, right? And we always need to be given at least one of them. And let's say that 1 is equal to 122 degrees. Well, let's see what we can solve here. Let's see what we can solve. So let's start with some opposite angles, right? Because we know 1 is 122 degrees. We know 1 is 122 degrees. That means that 3 has to be 122 degrees. Opposite angles. Okay. What about, can we use the F pattern for this one? Well, yeah, we can, right? We can use the F pattern right here. Right? We can use the F pattern right here. So how are we going to use the F pattern? Well, we see that our interior angle of 1 here is 122. Well, that means our interior angle over here, the bottom part of our F bracket, has to also be 122 degrees. 122 degrees, corresponding angle. Right? Corresponding angle. Okay, so we're getting through here. What about 4 and 8? Let's think about, well, actually, no, let's still go back to our corresponding angles here. So what about how can we use the corresponding angle for 3 here? Well, we can do the same F pattern, right? We can do this pattern. And we could say that if angle 3 here is 122, that means that angle 7 here has to be 122 degrees. F pattern, right? F pattern. And then that works out here too, right? Because these are also opposite angles, so they should also be equal. All right, how can we find out 4 here, though? How can we find out 4? Well, 4 has to be supplementary to 122, or this number 1. So 122 or 180 minus 122 is going to equal 4. So what's 180 minus 122? Well, that's going to be 180 minus 120 would be 60. 190 minus 122 is going to be 58. And then, hey, this one's 58. That means that 2 has to be 58. Opposite angle, right? And if 2 is 58, that means that 6 has to be 58. This is the F pattern. And if 6 is 58, that means that 8 has to be 58. This is the opposite angle. And just like that, we have every single angle in here figured out. So what the homework is going to be, it's going to be using these strategies in a more kind of just a different context. You're going to have to think about them a little harder. But you should be able to get the gist of what the problems are. I'll post the solutions later, one day after. And that is all I have for you folks. So have a wonderful, wonderful week, and we will reconnect later this week on Thursday. Okay, see you everyone. Bye.